Hey everybody, this is Alexander Brandon coming at you with another deep drive. This is attempt number 3 because the first 2 had technical difficulties. Don't we all love those technical difficulties? Driving in Georgetown, Texas this December 15th. It's my son Sean's birthday today. Happy birthday, Sean. And what do we have to talk about today? Well, since this is a deep drive, it's talking about deeper subjects. Let's see, first of all, the sleeper must awaken. There's some big changes on the horizon, which I'm not going to be talking about on this video series just yet. We got some big changes coming up. And sometimes we do have big changes in life. How do we cope with them? How do we deal with them? What changes do we choose to make? What changes just happen? How do we navigate all of that? I've started on the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and that was recommended by quite a few people, including Lemac 912, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's kind of therapeutic at the moment in terms of just clarifying a few things, the things that we get caught up in, like everybody's life is better on social media, the usual thing, but sometimes, a lot of times, things bear repeating. And in fact, there's some subjects that I'll talk about in deep drives that I'm going to repeat. That doesn't mean that I'm forgetting what I said before, and sometimes it is. So, Sleeper Must Awaken is approaching. Oh yeah, that's right. So in addition to that book, there's a lot of learning that I'm doing about me. Something that my wife and I are talking to our kids about, that we're talking to each other about, is learning about ourselves and how we grow and the things that we choose to do, the things that just can go on autopilot, like, you know, a lot of responsibilities can just happen. We don't need to put too much thought into them, and that's a really good thing. But other things are good to put thought into, think about, talk about, believe it or not, and figure out. And those things are journeys, like learning about relationships and feelings and things that, there's things that we just don't talk about on social media. There really aren't. I mean, post your vacation pictures, post your family pictures, and then there's the thing, those are important. And then there's the things that we feel too scared to talk about, or we feel that we don't know how to talk about those things. So I started learning about. I never asked myself, who am I?
Who am I? I don't know. I guess I have a lot of things to ponder.
Very broad philosophical question. A lot of people think they know who they are. I had some assumptions about who I was, but I never really sat down and asked myself that question. And then decided to read some books, like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was my first one. There's the Wake Up Routine. It was recommended by Emil Pagualieri. I can never pronounce his last name. Designer on many great Bethesda games. We worked together eons ago at Ion Storm, and he recommended a 30-day wake-up routine. And it's one of those books that starts with, oh, let me tell you about my life, and go into all these stories about, all this hardship and how I came out of that hardship. And I understand that that can be a good way to preface things. A lot of us want to get right to the point. So it takes a while. Like about halfway through the book is where he really starts talking about how to do a 30-day plan of visualizing your goals and just things that some of us think like, oh, I've already got that down. That's part of my daily routine. I just do it, right? Some of us don't just do it. Some of us need to think about it. Some of us need to figure it out. And that's a different way of doing things. But so the figuring out who I am or if you're asking yourself that question, or if you have asked yourself that question, there's ways of figuring it out. There's books you can read. There's things like therapy, talking to people about trying to make sense of the jumble of stuff in your head, getting all that figured out. And that is possibly one of the most important things that we can do on a fundamental level, and that's something that I want to talk to my boys a little more about. Is what are your values? Well, there's values that I think that we all share, because there's things that that do pop up on social media that warrant going into a little further. One of them is, I can't stand people that give me BS. I can't stand people that are two-faced. You better watch out if you cross me. That is a way. It's funny. I find that more on women's Facebook walls than men's Facebook walls. But it's, I'm sighing about it, and it's not really an eye roll. It's more of a realization that these women that is a form of vulnerability without necessarily really getting into what's behind it. That is, I don't feel heard as a person. I don't feel like, does anybody care? Is it just me doing what I gotta do and not anybody seeing who I am and caring about who I am whatsoever? This is deep stuff, but it's stuff that we don't tell each other about. We don't talk to each other about very much. Heck, I don't talk with some of my closest friends about that subject very much. So the whole the on the surface stuff of I can't stand two-faced people. Okay, that's good. That's a good thing to be. But how do you what tends to happen is you'll meet somebody that says one thing, does another. Have I done this? A lot, plenty. I'll say something, I'll do something else, right? Does that make me somebody to not associate with, to permanently be a bad human being? Of course it doesn't. It took me years to tell myself that I'm a good person, that I care about other people, that there's different ways of showing it, and there's ways to grow in how to show it. And sometimes it can differ from person to person. But until we start talking more about this, until we start taking it a little more seriously, and this is something my wife and I talk about too, is until we teach our kids social and emotional learning and scenarios of, teaching teachers too, about here's a scenario of how you deal with somebody that says something that could upset you, a way to respond to it, a way to express yourself. That goes to the stuff that I'm doing with gender relations, and trying to go to conferences and talk about that. A way to express yourself as a guy, as a woman. Women don't feel heard. Guys feel like they can't say anything without fear of it being taken the wrong way. That's a real thing. And so we have all this sarcasm and stuff that we use to sort of dance around it. But what we got to do is establish Rule 0. That's something that Colin, he's a designer on Torment, Tides of Numenera, and I think he's working at Larian Studios now. That resonated with me. Rule 0 is, we may have arguments, we may have disagreements, but I respect you as a person, and you respect me. We don't have a deep resentment that cannot be resolved. That's a really big deal. It's very important. It's something that I have seen a lot in my life. It's a lot. I'm sure a lot of people see that with their closest relationships. Sometimes even with family. That there's just something you feel you can't resolve, and it creates resentment, and it becomes corrosive. If I will die on the hill of trying to deal with that so that I can respect people, not just close people, but everybody. And I think that's something that we also don't talk about on social media. We just stay in our comfort zones of let me argue about politics or religion or get upset about X, Y, and Z, right? One of the most fundamental things we can do is start focusing on us. Let's not worry about the next big tech gadget. Let's not worry about something complex like, oh, I'm gonna argue about just the most surface level discussion of politics based on years of just holding to these single ideas. Let's delve in, and I heard this on Ted Lasso last night. The therapist says, discipline, not denial, right? So this is hard stuff. This is, people just opening up about it, it's vulnerability. We're talking more about that. Brene Brown has a Netflix special I highly encourage everybody to check out that concerns vulnerability. There's some books that my therapist recommends from Brene Brown that are that I want to check out. Just because you put yourself out there doesn't mean people won't knock you back. Doesn't mean people won't disagree. Doesn't mean that you will feel pain. To me, it's worth it. It's hard, but it's worth it. And that goes. An easy example is work. Say you're at work and somebody presents something to you that you got to ask yourself: is this something that is going to stay with me as an issue that can't be resolved, or is it something that has to be figured out one way or another? Like, you did this thing, or I made this mistake. It's taken me years just to admit to people, people more junior, that I don't understand what they're telling me in a work situation. And the same can go for personal situations, but in a work situation, if I have 27 years of experience, it's supposed to get harder and harder for me to say, I don't know what you're talking about. As you get further in life, it becomes more important to say that. Because that just means that if you assume that you know what somebody's talking about and you screw up, the rookies are going to think that's a rookie mistake. And it is. Anyway, I've been babbling for a while about this. Shout out to my family and friends, wife and sons. Happy birthday to my 12-year-old, to my friends Aaron Rudkin and Jason Emery. Now that I'm parked, I can actually look at this. So personal relationships, social and emotional learning, teaching our kids, and practicing all throughout life, and making big changes. That's what I came to talk about. I'll be back later with another deep drive.